This is Texas AK and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to discuss upgrading the gearbox to a metal gearbox on the MINI B Unlimited. I already took the rear end off, and by doing that I unscrewed all the screws along this side and this side, and that allows me to remove these two brackets on the side. They're like mud guards. On one side you have some wires that are clamped on, and they're clamped on right here. Well, there's a screw underneath on the bottom that releases those wires. Then I undid this screw here and this one here, and that starts loosening up the front of the motor belt. And then I took these 4 screws out, and this allowed me to remove the complete gearbox in the back for the diff. So once you get the diff off, you can continue the disassembly using the 1.5 mil Allen. So this is the bracket on the back. I already loosened the screws up to save some time, but this is the bracket that holds the back wing on. And then you have 4 screws that hold your shock tower on. Alright, then you disconnect both turnbuckles in the back. That allows you to remove the shock tower. And the shocks come with the shock tower when you remove it. So in the back right here is your gearbox, and that's what we're going to be replacing. So in order to get this off, we have to remove the motor and the side dust cover. So a lot of people will cut a hole in this dust cover right here where this bump is to be able to adjust their slip clutch in the back gearbox. I'll show you that in just a second. So this is your slip clutch right here that goes on your gear, and this is right here is your pinion gear that drives your spur gear. So the slip clutch allows this to slip if there's ever any kind of binding, or when you go to slow down and you apply your brake. If you apply too much brake, you'll allow it to slip a little bit to prevent damage. Sometimes people will eliminate this with a slipper eliminator. We'll go over that later whenever we're going to do the reassembly of this whole unit. But yeah, that slipper eliminator will allow you to be a little bit more consistent in your driving. But make sure if you use an eliminator, you have a controller that allows you to adjust your brake down and up. So in order to take this slip clutch off, use a 5.5 millimeter nut driver. So the way it works is there's a slip pad in here that allows that to slip on these two surfaces. Don't lose this little pin in here. Next thing you want to do is take your pinion off. There'll be a little screw right here, a little grub screw, 1.5 mil. Notice there's some white substance right here. That white substance is thread locker. Whenever you're putting metal screws into metal items, you want to use thread locker. That way your screws do not back out with vibration. Now we'll take this motor out. First, let's take this cover off. Get it out of the way. Now what I like to do whenever I take a motor off so I don't lose the screws, I will directly put them back into the motor. Anytime you can put your screws back into something so you don't lose them, the better. Make sure you don't lose the washer that's with it, if you plan on reusing it. See, now I don't have to worry about losing that screw. The next step will be taking these two screws off to remove the motor plate. When we go back together later with this, we'll be replacing the motor and the motor plate. There we go. So far, so good. So right now, let's just take a look at this differential. Well, this is your input shaft. So when your input shaft is spinning, it spins these two shafts back here that drive your drive shafts in the back for your rear wheels. So these drive your rear wheels, and this is your input shaft. So notice if I put my finger on one of these, it stops and the other one spins. That's because the differential in there is a free-floating differential that allows it to shift back and forth, so the power goes to the wheel that is spinning freely, which is sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. So if you are making a drift racing vehicle, that's a bad thing. If you're making a dragster, that's a bad thing, or a car that runs on dirt, that's a bad thing. So let's open this up and check out what's inside. If you notice, while we're at it, you'll see some grease will be leaking out of the differential, especially if you've had it in there for a while, this grease will always leak out. You'll have to go back into these differentials and add grease periodically, and we'll cover what kind of grease you should use and my suggestions. There's other people that suggest different types of grease, super tacky, super thick, but I tend to go towards a little bit of a thinner marine grade grease. So let's open it up. I'm going to take these ball joints off too, because we're going to end up moving them. So we'll move these ball joints to the new unit. When we go to install it, I'm going to take them off now. And these are the joints for your turnbuckles. All right, slowly drive this off. See, now there's one side of your differential. Notice there's a lot of grease inside here. This is an open differential, so everything is open in here. So as this spins, it turns the main gear, which then rotates the spider gears on the side right here, and the spider gears are what rotate right here. So notice if I just spin the shaft, the spider gears will turn. Kind of cool. Let me get you a close up. All right, so this is your input shaft coming in. It's metal. It's got a bearing on here. You always want to make sure that this is a good bearing when you put it back in. We'll be going back in with the MIP shaft, a hardened shaft. Then right here is your idle gear. Your idle gear is what will transfer the power from your input shaft over to your differential, and it is also metal. And this is a pin that it floats on. And there are bearings inside this idle shaft. This little idler gear. It's on the idler shaft. Now you can buy a low-C differential kit to rebuild this if these gears go bad. Oops, I just got grease on the part number. And that's the part number right here. Low-C LOS 212018. It's for a Mini T 2.0 and also for the Mini B. Comes with new bearings, idle gear, and primary gear for the differential. It does not come with new spider gears. Spider gears typically don't go bad very often. If you have a different experience with the spider gears, let me know. But we will be replacing all of this. There we go, pushed it out. Notice there is a bearing on here as well. And notice how this sits in here. There's no gasket inside here, so this just sits directly on that bearing. So there's not a good seal in there. So you will always have grease coming out. And don't ever seal it, because you want to have a little bit of airflow, because when your gear heats up in here, you need to allow the gas out and the gas back in. So don't ever seal it up. Just always go back in here a couple times a year and repack it with grease. Ta-da. Torn apart. While we're at it, just notice how thin this grease is. It's not super thick. So you don't have to have a crazy thick grease in there. A lot of people like thicker grease in there. I don't know why. I think a lot of times the thicker grease with like a ball clutch or ball diff will be better. But with this, there's no need to have stupid amounts of grease in there, especially really thick grease. So let's weigh them. Let's see what the difference is in weight. So a stock diff, let's zero this out. All right, stock diff is 7 grams. Metal diff is 14 grams. So it's 7 grams heavier. So that's pretty good. That's a low center mass point on your truck. So it's a great place to add a little bit of weight. So if you're looking to add weight on your Mini B, this is a good way to do it, a good option. Now, remember this one was slipping. When you spun one, the other one would go the other way, the other direction. This is the Mini B MIP differential, the ball diff that we rebuilt, or actually just built the other day. The good thing about this is you can adjust how much it slips. So you can have a good combination of like a positive traction or a spool like the one by Hot Racing, or you can have this one. And this one is adjustable, so you can adjust how much pressure, how much tension it takes to actually break it free, which is a good deal. Now, when you run a spool diff like this one, notice nothing spins. It's all solid. So with nothing spinning, you always get positive traction. Well, what ends up happening is your car will end up pushing forward more on turns unless you floor it. You have to floor it and break the tires free to spin around. Then that causes oversteer. All right, so this is not good for like short course or for carpet. Now, if you're on a dirt course, yeah, that would be great, because whenever you go forward, you make sure you have all your power to your rear wheels, even if it's spinning, because if you're in dirt, one wheel will start to spin, and it will spin even faster because it's the one that is spinning the most. So with this, it's great for drag racing, dirt course, things like that. We will not be putting this in this truck, the Mini B, for the buggy. We'll end up putting this in the short course truck I'm going to build. This is the differential that is from Hot Racing, and I will attach to the link where you can get this spool. It's a great option for dirt. Now the Mini MIP ball diff is going to be the option we're going to go with. Notice that the gear is a little bit wider when compared side by side, so it's got more running surface. And another thing is the MIP diff is plastic compared to the spool being metal, or the original stock one is metal as well. But this is a plastic gear. I don't know how much that's going to wear, but they do sell a differential rebuild kit that's about half the price. And I will attach the differential rebuild kit and the ball diff link to the description below. So this is a whole bunch of mess that we're taking out. And we're going to rebuild this diff with the new parts. It fits in nicely. All right, ball diff. Let's check the lateral play on it. Ooh, that's a tight fit on that side. Fits fine there. Oh, I see what's happening. So take a look right here. The other day we put this nut cup, remember, on there? You see how it's sticking out? That needs to be trimmed down flat so this can go over it. So let's do that with a razor blade. All right, so now it fits there, and now that fits on there nicely. Not a whole lot of play in there. Feels nice and tight, so that's going to seal pretty well. So we will install the MIP race top shaft and idler gear. Part number is 20070. And MIP always sends a cool little sticker with their stuff. So here's the original shaft that we took out. With the bearing. And here's the new one. So let's see what the weight difference is on these. Here's your original one at 4 grams. And your new one at 1 gram. It's a lot lighter. So that's pretty good. It's good to have on your rotating assemblies a lighter shaft so you don't have as much centrifugal force. So let's compare the old diff parts compared to the new diff. It's gonna make a mess. Let's put this over here. Little Dixie cup. Zero it back out. All right. That's all the old diff parts at 16 grams. And the new diff assembly, the ball diff, is 12 grams. So you got a loss of 4 grams in weight. Like I said, rotating assemblies you don't want to have be real heavy. And I bet that's all mainly because of this gear being plastic. So let's put the bearing on this side first. I'm not replacing any of the bearings because this is a brand new truck. All this stuff barely has any wear on it. Nice. So here's the old pinion. Take the shaft out, and there's a bearing on this other side. I'm going to reuse these bearings as well. The MIP kit does not come with bearings for the idler gear. So I'm going to weigh this real quick. I won't move the camera. Zero it out. The stock one is 2 grams. The new one doesn't even weigh in at a gram. And this new one is plastic. I believe. It don't feel like metal. So put the bearing in on one side. And my hands are all slippery. There we go. And we'll put the bearing in on the other side, like so. Then we can drop it into place. Now notice on the MIP differential, there is a lip. I'm putting the lip down because if I don't put it down, when you go to put this idler gear in there, it will not mesh in because the teeth won't be free. See, now I can't pull it out. That's because it's locked in there with the idler gear. That will help keep it from floating. It's in there nice. I like that. All right, so right here in this cup, there's 2 types of grease. This one here is a Lucas white lithium. It's like a marine grade grease. It's all purpose, all weather. I love this stuff. I put it on a lot of my cars. Any white lithium marine grade grease, I love using it because the water doesn't get it off. And it's not too thick. If you get too thick, it ends up causing more friction in there and actually is more stress on your motor. But a lot of people use the extra thick, tacky grease, but the problem with that is adding more friction for your motor, adding more stress on your system. But the thinner stuff frees it up, allows it to free spin a lot easier. The thicker stuff, they use that to keep it from leaking out as fast, but if you maintain your vehicle, you don't have to worry about it. But this marine grade grease right here is also a good one to use. It's slightly thicker, but not too much. So this is a Lucas marine grade grease that is blue. All right, let's finish this. My phone was acting up. I didn't realize I had my storage full. I had to delete like, I don't know, 10 gig of videos and stuff. Anyway, white lithium grease. This is what I use on a lot of my RC cars. It's very great. If you notice, I put a little bitty hole right there on the tip of it. That way I can better control my application. Notice there's a lot of grease on here now. It's because I've done so many takes. Put some grease in the corner right here. When you put some grease in the corner, right, then you rotate the shaft. It will spread the grease between all the gears. Once you get the grease to where you're satisfied, then you put the other cover on. All right, nice and tight. Got a lot of grease. There's gonna be a lot of grease pouring out of this thing in the future. Anyway, it's very smooth functioning. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the screw back in here. First, I'm gonna put some medium strength Loctite on here. You can get some weak strength hot Loctite. It's pink in color. This one is blue. Blue is medium strength. It's what most people use in general on their RC cars. Comes in a bottle, something like this. It'll say medium strength removable. And that's what you'll use. It doesn't take a whole lot. Normally put some in a cup like that if you can't control it. And then you dip your screw in there. Tighten your screw up. When you tighten it up, you don't want to over tighten it. Because if you over tighten it, you'll strip everything out. Let's clean some stuff off of here. So notice the gearbox is now moving smoothly. And notice I can hold this back and the other one will spin. It takes a little more force than it did before. That's because the ball diff tries to spin both wheels at the same speed, but it doesn't. So whenever your car is trying to turn around a corner, your outside wheel will have to move faster than the inside wheel to maintain the same speed. So this diff will allow that to happen. Excuse me. So earlier I was trying to describe these diffs. I probably messed it up, I'm sure, but this is the spool. The spool spins both wheels the same speed all the time, no matter what. This is great for drag racing, dirt, things like that. It's not good on carpet because when you go to turn, this outside wheel will try to go the same speed as the inside wheel, which pushes the car forward. The only way you can get it to turn is by accelerating more, which causes you to oversteer. So with this spool, it's hard to be consistent because you're either trying to push forward or oversteer. So it's understeer and oversteer. You'll continue to try to do that with this diff, unless you're on some dirt or on some drag racing. So this will allow them to go different speeds because they can move separately of each other. Anyway, that is your gearbox and diff rebuilt. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you didn't, I'm sorry, and I really don't care. If you did, please like and subscribe. Watch my other videos. I will get better, I promise, and I will try to condense these down to one video every time, but my phone jacked up today. Again, this is Texas AK-47 signing out. Enjoy your RC cars and have fun.